Handed down through the family, and it's ended up with us.
It's actually Japanese, and it's the class of ware which is popularly called satsuma, which is a high-fired earthenware with a crackled glaze, and the crazing on it is actually part of it. It's not a defect. It developed really in response to Japan opening up to the West, which it did in 1850.
Satsuma earthenware takes its name from a province on the southern tip of Kyushu, but by the late 19th century the finest workshops were in Kyoto, not Satsuma. The Kinkozen studio under Sabei VII was the largest and most successful of them. At its peak it employed several hundred craftsmen, each one specializing in a single element of decoration, figures, drapery, gold leaf, calligraphy. A piece with two named painters' signatures is a rare visible record of that division of labor.
So it was a two-tier manufacturing process. This is one of the top pieces. This is a really knockout piece. It's in a form of sort of a tea canister, but I don't think it was ever meant for serious use. On the bottom we would expect to find, and indeed have got, his mark, Kinkozan, and then the bottom character is Tsukuru, which means made. Round it, what appears to be just simply decoration, but actually it's in very stylized characters. It says Dai Nihon, which is Great Japan, and then Kyoto. The decoration on here is just breathtaking. It is just unbelievable that somebody could take a brush with enamel colours on it and do this extraordinarily detailed painting. The scenes are absolutely typical. We've got a woman and her daughter there. We've got a mountainous landscape. We've got a cockerel perched on a blue rock. We've got a couple of children. Another landscape with figures.
Sabei VII personally attended the Paris Exposition Universal of 1900 to oversee the Kinkozen display, and his refined Kosatsuma earned medals at international fairs from Chicago to St. Louis. The studio closed in 1927 on his death, no successor took it on, and the greater water kilns that had defined Kyoto ceramics for 2 centuries went cold.
Well, I thought so. I'll put it in a glass cabinet when I get home.
Put it in a glass cabinet when you get home, because it's worth £8,000 to £10,000.
Blimey.
This video is brought to you by Velco, the antique identifier app. Snap a photo of any item and Velco gives you an instant identification and a value estimate from its database of millions of antiques and collectibles. Available free on the App Store and Google Play. Now back to the appraisals.
On the Malzak estuary opposite Cadr Idris, and for years and years it was on the beach, and I rescued it and brought it into our cottage and put it in the fireplace, and I don't know if it's worth anything, but it's always interested me.
Well, when I first saw this, I have to say that it was I got fairly excited because it's a wonderful bold piece of carving. It's a piece of stoneware, and it has this face of, it looks almost like...
John Dwight founded the Fulham Pottery in 1672, on a bend of the Thames just west of the City of London. He held the first English patent for what he called transparent earthenware, commonly known as porcelain, though what he actually made was salt-glazed stoneware, fired to the point where the body itself vitrifies. The patent ran for 14 years and gave him a monopoly that the Staffordshire potters would later challenge in court.
Looking at that and relating around 1670, 1675, that's the first thing. Now, I think if it's from England, now I get even more excited because I think this stoneware, the only person that was making stoneware in Britain, in England at this time, was probably a chap called John Dwight. John Dwight was born in the 1630s, and in 1671 took out a patent to make, first of all, to make transparent ware, commonly called or usually called porcelain or china. But we know that he didn't probably make that. But more germane to this is that he also took out a patent at the same time to make stoneware, which was vulgarly called, in their words, cologneware, copying German stoneware. Now, John Dwight is certainly the foremost, first of our great potters. Now, some of his work is represented in our major museums, and there are very few of them. They're carved by other people. Probably he ran the pottery and that was about it. Now, I'm sure this is right in date. That I'm convinced about.
Most of what Dwight produced is known only through the great archaeological dig of 1971 to 79, which uncovered his kill, his coded test pieces, and the molds for his portrait figures. Whole pieces are extraordinarily rare. His stoneware figure of his daughter Lydia, who died aged 6 in 1674, is now considered the founding work of English ceramic sculpture. The Victoria and Albert holds 2 of the surviving portraits.
Quite a bit of money. Now, I have no idea, this is, again, it's highly conjectural. I would say that we're talking 30,000 or even more. So this is what I think about this wonderful object.
In the fireplace, too, you know, for years.
It's a terrific story.
Oh, amazing.
And I am so grateful you brought it along. It's made my day.
Gosh, thank you. I can't believe it.
Thank you.
I can't believe it.
And thanks to the family.
Yes, that's incredible.
There are fewer things more distinctive than Martin Brothers pottery. And I think if we went round this crowd here and asked them their opinion, it would be a very mixed and split audience between love, loathe, and plain curiosity. So I have to ask, of those 3, which are you?
Well, I was left a very small vase, which isn't here, many years ago, and I fell in love with Martinware. And then back in the 70s, one could buy Martinware very cheaply in London. They used to have quarterly sales in which they'd have 40 or 50 pieces in auction.
But in the 70s, whilst Martin Brothers was beginning to become recognised, it was still derived.
The Martin brothers, Robert Wallace, Walter Fraser, Edwin Bruce, and Charles Douglas, were England's first true studio potters. They opened their first kiln in Fulham in 1873 and moved to a converted soap works at Southall for years later, where they stayed for nearly 40 years. Robert Wallace was the sculptor, trained at the Royal Academy Schools and at the Lambeth School of Art under John Sparks, and the grotesque tobacco jar birds were entirely his invention.
But £450 and £600 was still a reasonable amount of money. That was still a considered investment. And I think it is about that recognition. People are starting to look at the Martin Brothers. I mean, 4 brothers. You know, you've got Robert Wallace, Charles, Walter, Edwin, who were manufacturing these pieces. They were a very curious bunch of potters, really. They were a curious factory. Sometimes they would go months on end without firing, creating things. Things would go wrong, firings would get lost. They started their life, I'm sure you've done your research yourself, but in 1873, based in Fulham. And in 1877, they moved to Southall, which became their home up until the First World War. And across that period, this is what they were doing. And of course, the genius is Robert Wallace. He's the Grand Master. He's the absolute pinnacle of what was going on there, creating these wonderful grotesque birds, as we now call them, with wit and humour and curious little looks. And, you know, this chap here, this pair of birds, just turn it round.
The double-headed grotesque variant only appeared in the workshop's final years, after 1905, and is the rarest form Robert Wallace made. Walter Fraser, the brother who held all the technical knowledge, kilns, glazes, throwing, died in 1912. The studio formally closed 2 years later. Robert Wallace carried on alone, making a handful of pieces a year, until his own death in 1923.
They're going all over the world. Very desirable in today's market. That vase today, £10,000. The bird in the middle. He's a big example. He's an early example, 1884. He's got a lovely expression. He does have a little firing line across his beak, which unfortunately will hold the value back. The big collectors are put off by very visible damage to a key part of the bird. And it's a shame because as a result that means he's only worth 40,000.
Gosh. Wow. Amazing.
This is a late pairing. This is a 1907 bird. It's a double. The doubles are very desirable. It's a great looking pair, good colour. But it isn't as big as that one at the end of the day, and we've got to factor that in. And because it isn't as big, but it is a double, it's worth £60,000.
Gosh. Well, it's unbelievable.
So your pioneering spirit, nearly 40 years ago, has resulted in a table collection here well in excess of £100,000.
Gosh.
A collection that grew piece by piece across 40 years, bought one at a time for what working potters could afford. The owner's instinct to buy what they loved and let the values find them is the quietest and most reliable form of collecting on this program. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next. And there are plenty more incredible appraisals waiting for you on the channel. Go check them out.